So you mentioned this right before we hit record, but I have to ask you. You said you cut your teeth in selling selling beef flank, you said, to restaurants? What was it? Sides of beef? What?
Sides of beef or quarters of beef, whatever,
Yeah.
to restaurants. Yeah, and if you've read my book, A Mind for Sales, I got that job because I could not afford car insurance. So I
Mm,
had to get a job that supplied me with a car.
that's right.
And this job, taking sides of beef to restaurants, gave me a company car. And yeah, that was a really, really high class job, huh? Yeah.
Was there much cold calling with this? Were these
Oh yeah,
existing
it was cold.
customers? What was
It was
yeah.
just you. I mean, you had a defined list of restaurants who ordered for you, from you. But we were a small player, so I mean, you just knocked on any door, you walked in any kitchen, you just would go in and see if you could get an order for, I don't know, steaks, or I don't know. Let me tell you something. I learned the dark side of selling because I don't even want to go there. There was some stuff that I learned that you got to be kidding me, man. You
Yeah.
talk about an unethical business. I'm
Oh, like
sure
that kind
now.
of
I'm sure
stuff.
it's clean.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cleaned up a lot now. But boy, there was some lack of ethics, lack of integrity. But I got a car. Of course, I got fired from that
Yeah.
job, so it's okay. So I guess it did not work out.
Well, that's an interesting point that you bring up because I do work with a lot of sellers. We don't do as much one-on-one coaching now. We used to do quite a bit of that with reps, but for any rep that's listening that maybe it's not like working for a super shady company, but they don't really quite believe in the thing that they're selling, or they're just, the environment's a little toxic, like that kind of stuff. What advice do you have for someone that's in that situation?
You know what? Get out. I
Yeah.
hung with it too long because I was there just about a year, or in fact, it was right at a year. And I thought, because I can't afford to quit, I can't
Yeah.
afford not to have a car. I can't, I need this job. I need this job. I need this job. So I put myself through a tremendous amount of pain and punishment that I did not need to. And the whole time I knew this is just not right. This is just not right. What they're asking me to do, where I'm going, and the customers they're having me call on. It just didn't feel. It felt slimy in
Yeah.
every way imaginable. And I wish it was the best thing for me the day I got fired. It was
Yeah.
absolutely the best thing because it allowed me to say, okay, you know what? I can get a more decent job. And I was able to get a far more respectable job. And literally in just like a week and a half, 2 weeks, it didn't take long at all. So it wasn't like I was starved. I wasn't going to starve to death.
Yeah.
But I'm glad, because otherwise, you know what? I probably would have stayed there another 6 or 8, 9 months, 10 months, who knows, in a very
Yeah.
toxic situation.
Yeah. It's tough because I couldn't imagine. I have never worked for a place and not been on board with like what I was selling. That would be really, really hard to be in a sales job where you don't really believe in what you're doing, because we talk about cold calling a lot. We talk about prospecting. We talk a lot about, multi-threading and getting to executives and a lot of that requires a tremendous amount of confidence and belief in yourself and in what you're selling. And without doing that, that's got to be rough.
Well, it did. I want to pick up on it because it did harm me. It absolutely harmed me because I began to doubt myself. I mean, I didn't want to be in
Yeah.
sales. I only got into sales because I couldn't afford car insurance. So
Yeah.
that's why I got into sales, because I needed a car. So I was coming in already skeptic. I was coming in with, I don't want to be here. And being in this toxic environment, it destroyed my um, self confidence even more. I mean, it became a big giant charade that I would put on,
Yeah.
walking into the office, walking into customers, et cetera, et cetera. Now, to a certain degree, those were some skills that I learned because, again, throughout any sales career, there are tough periods.
Yeah.
And you've got to just buckle up, guys, and let's make it happen, right? I mean, yeah. So to a certain degree, there were some elements that helped me, but far more, it hurt me because it began showing me um, unethical ways, ways that just didn't have a high regard for the customer. It was more about just me. I got a commission to make. I got to make sure I've got money in my check this coming Friday. So really getting fired was absolutely the best thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus now there's, when I was coming up in sales, when you were coming up in sales, there was no Glassdoor.com. There was no, there's a site called repview.com now that's really cool. If you're not at a good place, you need to go find another place for sure. What, one thing that you talk about a lot that I want to pick your brain on today related to confidence is you talk a lot about a whole part of your high profit selling book is dedicated to selling to the C-suite. A lot of the stuff you talk about around prospecting, how to interact and speak with the executive. For you, I'm curious, what was that journey like? Do you remember the first time or first few times that you actually interacted with an executive, and what did you feel like beforehand? Were you nervous? What was that whole experience like?
Scared stiff. Yeah. I mean, believe me, I'm like, whoa, what am I doing here? I can still remember walking down the halls of some major customers I was calling on, and whoa, these are, but then you had to stop and realize that, what, they put their pants on one leg at a time. Yeah. They have families, they have kids, they're no different than anybody else. And then what I quickly began realizing is that as I began progressing up in organization, moved into a leadership role, and I even still remember this. I'd be in a leadership role and still having to go out and make calls on C-suite people, still being nervous as can be, because you don't get over it, because you don't realize, as much as you prepare, it's hard to be absolutely prepared because you don't know where the questions are. Just yesterday, I found myself in the executive offices of a Fortune 500 company here in the Dallas area. And it was a meeting I was not expecting. Phone rang the day before and said, "Hey, if you're available, come on down, come on. Yeah, come on down." And I'm very confident now walking into a C-suite. But let me tell you something, the questions that were thrown at me, wow, I never expected those questions. But what enabled me to succeed in the interview is just that, you've done the dance enough times. Now, for a new person, that's not possible. But the idea is this: you're going to have answers to some questions, and you're not going to have answers to others. Don't blow smoke. And that's the single biggest thing that I tell people in the C-suite. If you're talking to people in the C-suite, don't blow smoke. If you don't know the answer, don't make it up. That got me in trouble early on because I kind of reverted back to my selling meat days and just make up stuff. It got me in trouble a few times. After I learned that a couple times early on in my career, like, that doesn't work.
Yeah. To that point too, it's those people in the C-suite for the most part are there because they're very good at their jobs. And one of the things that you want to related to that don't blow smoke idea is if you're one of those people like me that likes to share a lot of data and stats and things like that, make sure your numbers are good, especially if it's numbers that you've gathered through some sort of discovery conversation and it's numbers about their company or how something is performing and whatnot. It's so important to do that because you can look like a major idiot when you try to fudge through stuff like that.
I got to add a couple comments on that. You got to know the numbers behind the numbers. It's not just good enough to know the numbers that you're going to share with them, but you got to understand how did you get to those numbers, because you got to be prepared for that C-suite person to ask you questions regarding them. And if you can't answer how you got to those numbers and where the source is and what are they a sum of, et cetera, what do they contribute to? What are they derived from, et cetera. Don't show the numbers because otherwise what it's going to do is it's going to show that you just came in with this presentation. You're like a puppy dog. You're just delivering a presentation. You don't have any idea what it's all about. So my whole premise is this: unless I know the background, I don't share it. The other piece is this: if you get this, especially in tech sales, many times we go in and we want to talk technical performance standards and so forth. Getting the C-suite. Don't do that at the C-suite because you're going to overwhelm them. That's not their world. And what they're going to do is they're going to pass you downstream. They're going to pass you down in the organization to somebody lower down for you to go talk to. Because the worst thing you can do in a C-suite conversation is to embarrass them.
Yeah.
And if you start getting into technical performance, most of them don't have that aptitude. Or maybe they did 10 years ago, but you know what? And that's not what they're concerned about. Because again, they're strategic. When we're talking at anybody in a C-level, we're talking strategic. We're not talking tactical. And this is absolutely key to keep in mind. Is this going to help a strategic conversation?
Yeah, I think that's actually a good place to dig in first, because when I think of the getting the meeting and then the selling to the C-suite and how we interact with them, the first part of that is the language. And you talk about that. And we're going to kind of do like almost like a synopsis of all of your books today, Mark.
Oh, great. I love it. Go for it.
Well, your first High Profit Selling was your first book, right?
Yes, correct.
So that book came out in 2012, and in going through it, it's so timeless. There isn't anything in there that's like, oh, this is something related to how people interact now, or this is the times, et cetera. It's all very timeless sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And one of the sections was on this language piece. Like, what is the language of the C-suite? You sort of started talking about the strategic element of it, but that was the hardest part for me. Not even selling to the C-suite, but selling to a proper VP of sales for the first time that, had hundreds of reps versus selling to the owner of a company where I'm just helping them sell. And, this person doesn't care about all the tactics and the playbooks they don't care about that at all. They don't even know what their reps really do on a daily basis, Let's start with that. How do you kind of think about the language that senior executives speak and knowing as a rep, hey, what did these people care about compared to the people that are easier to get meetings with that might be a little more working on the day-to-day type of stuff?
Yeah, I'm going to share a classic conversation I had. VP of sales. C-suite would have a C if they chose to give that to the person. And company, large organization, had some major issues. We're having a great conversation, probably about 20 minutes into the conversation. And I'm saying, hold on, I got to take a step back here, because you're owned by private equity firms, correct? I mean, I knew they were that. She said, yes. She said, yes. Well, and I said, I haven't really got clear as to what are the objectives that they've charged you with. What are you on the record for terms of delivery? And she said, great, thank you for asking. And she shared with me very specific. Now she would not have shared that with me right up front on the first meeting, but this was about the second or third call, and we had developed a level of trust. See, we've developed a level of trust. So she knows that I'm there to help her. So now what I can do is she shared with me, and then I can begin to play that. So how is what we're talking about going to help you achieve what you're kind of on the record for in terms of needing to deliver? And I let her match up. This is what's so key. There are critical decisions that you have to let the C-suite make the decision on. See, I was going to tell her, so we need to do this and this. I said, so, and I can't remember how I said, so how do you see this, what we're talking about, fit into achieving this? And she described it. So now I knew what the critical nature of. Now, this is what's cool. This is what's new. When you develop this far enough along, and again, you're not in it. This is not shock and awe. I'm not. You do not want to try to shock and awe somebody in the C-suite. Oh, if you don't make this decision, your company's going to burn. No, shut up. Come on, relax. The sun's still going to come up in the morning. But you get them going. And what is interesting was we got done, and she said, "Yeah, this is a major problem." And I came back. I said, "Okay, what do you think we should do about this?" Now, notice I didn't say, "Let me put together a proposal." I said, "What do you think we should do about this?" Because I wanted to feel her out. I wanted to see where she's coming.
Yeah.
And she said, Mark, I'd love to get kind of a plan back from you on this. I said, great. Okay. Hey, you know, you mentioned that you're on the record for this. How big of a hole, how big of a gap do you think your PE firms see this being? Because I was looking for a dollar amount. There's this pause. Don't rush anybody in the C-suite. Let them think. She came back and she blurted out a number. It was over 500 million and less than $1 billion. That's as tight as I'm going to go on this, okay? And I'm like, whoa, wow, this is huge. Now, she was able to share that with me. Boom, boom, great. What did it do? It had me playing at her level. I wasn't in shock and awe over the amount. No. I said, yeah, you know what? As I go through the numbers, I probably feel the same way. Yeah. I confirm. See, I was playing at her level. This is what's absolutely key. You gotta play at their level. Don't pander to them. Don't try to talk up to them. And of course, certainly don't talk down to them. Oh, you don't know this. Oh, hold it. You have no idea what they know or what they don't know. But don't go sitting there saying one way or the other. And what it does is it allows you to be seen as a peer. And when you're seen as a peer, then you get to have an incredible conversation. So long story short, I put together a plan. And just like we do in any call, bam, fam, book a meeting from a meeting.
Yep.
You know, I immediately said, hey, what's your calendar look like for next Tuesday or next Wednesday? Let's get some time. And boom, we booked a meeting from a meeting. Again, the same tactics, same strategies we do at any level of the organization. And the idea is to keep that conversation going. But the key thing is if you understand the strategic need that the customer has, you can solve anything. Yeah. I'll share one more. This is a funny story, and I love this. Company had called us. We were talking with them, and my salesperson was talking with them, and it was just, I mean, they were facing some real major issues. They were having a couple major competitors that were going to come into their space and potentially take 20, 30% of their business, 20, 30% of their people. This was going to be like, oh, wow, what just happened to our business? And VP of sales, CRO, both signed off on having me come in, do this big project. And they said, great. All we need to do is just get legal to sign it. Done. Legal takes a look at it. Now, I'm not aware of this at this time, but they freaked out over the dollar amount. And they went to the CEO to let the CEO know how much his CRO and VP of sales was looking to spend on this guy, Mark Hunter. Before I know it, I'm on the phone with the CEO. He calls me. And he makes the comment. He says, Mark, we haven't met before, but your price is really too high. How much will you cut it by? This is like in the first 10 seconds of the conversation.
Yeah.
This is with the CEO of a pretty good sized company. First of all, I'm just shocked that he's doing this.
Yeah.
But I think he just felt like I'm gonna take care of this issue right now. I'm gonna call this guy right now.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I can't change the price. All I can do is change the value of what you're going to get from it. How many people and how much business do you expect to lose next year from these two new competitors coming into your marketplace? And then I was silent. And of course, I mean, the heart is just thump, 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 thump,
Yeah.
thump. But I'm silent. He comes back about 10 seconds, what seemed like 2 hours later, and says, that was good. You're hired.
Yeah.
Now, stop and think about that for a moment. See, because I knew what their strategic problem was. He knew. You know what's funny? I don't think to this day he had a clue as to how much business exactly how much business they were going to lose or how many people they were going to lose, et cetera, et cetera. All he knew is it was going to be a bloodbath. And that's why they were hiring me and my company to come in and help them work through this issue, which we did. We were able to successfully. The competitors, came into the marketplace, but the damage was very, very minimal. But see, here's the whole thing. If I had responded to the CEO with a tactical answer, oh, what elements of the program would you like to cut? Or what could we do here? Those are tactical responses.
Yeah.
I would have given up a tremendous amount of profit, tremendous amount of revenue, tremendous amount of solution I would have given them. And I potentially could have lost the entire deal. Instead, I played the strategic ball, which was the major problem that they had. The new competitors. That's where the C-suite dance is at.
Yeah.
Because he made the comment, he says, we don't have this in the budget. He says, we don't have this in the budget. But it's okay. We'll find it. And they did. Yeah.
They always will.
There's
so much to unpack with what you just said here because, I think Gartner's got a stat. It's like 92%. They pulled a bunch of B2B buyers and 92% of them said everything that we purchase is attached to a strategic initiative. And I bet the other 8% are too.
Yes. But why would they buy anything unless it's attached to something strategic? So the question you have to ask yourself is, why are we as salespeople dancing around with garbage and not having more strategic conversations, especially at the C level, period?
Yeah. Yep. Let's talk about how to have that high level conversation. I feel like what can be really hard. I don't know. Did you find that being a sales leader helped you sell better?
Oh, yes.
Because then you kind of understand the strategic nature because you either are doing that or you're a frontline leader or director that rolls right up to someone that's very strategic. For a rep that hasn't had that experience, how do you learn to think more like a leader or an executive? And I know selling is leading, but without being in that position and kind of thinking about that, how would you recommend someone sort of develops that experience of thinking like that?
Yeah. First of all, you got to ditch the presentation. You got to ditch the presentation because especially at the higher level, last thing they want to see is a presentation. I still remember I was walking in on a Friday afternoon. It was a Fortune 500 company based out of New Jersey, walking in, meeting a very senior level person. And I had a great PowerPoint presentation. Oh, it was awesome. It was awesome. Oh, it was good. I spent an hour on it. And his administrative assistant says, oh, why don't you go into the conference room, which is where he meets everybody. He'll be in there in just a few minutes. So I walk in and I sit down. I just got that perfect, I'm going to let him have the end, but I'm right there next to him. And I got my computer kind of open. And it's still a dark screen, but it's ready to go. And he walks in and he goes, man, I'll tell you what, I've seen 5 PowerPoint presentations today, and I hope I don't see another one. And I just quietly just close the lid on the computer and we just have a conversation.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, that was a lesson learned.
Yeah.
It's not a PowerPoint presentation. It's not pretty slides. It's not this capability. It's having a conversation. Now, what does this mean? This means that you're walking in with questions that you can ask that are relevant to them and their business, and specifically what this person is challenged with. Now, this isn't like, oh, how's your quarter going? How's your year going? Hey, you've done that homework before. You know what that is. But it's an insight in terms of, hey, I just saw where, your competitor X did this or Y. How is that going to impact the marketplace? What shifts are you seeing with your customer base? What shifts are you seeing with your suppliers? You're asking them questions that get them to, oh, this person's done some homework. This person, again, it isn't like, hey, congratulations, your earnings were up 12% last quarter. Well, look, sucker, they've been up 12% every quarter for the last 14 quarters. So don't sit there and congratulate me on just the last one. One of the big lessons that I failed, this goes back to the days of newspapers. Minneapolis, I still, oh man, this is creepy. I walk in, I have my boss with me, and we had noticed in the Minneapolis Star Tribune, back when they were newspapers in the hotel, that this company had announced their quarterly earnings, and they were pretty impressive. It was great, right on the business page. And so we go in, we sit down with this person. We're on the floor with all the C-suites. Now, this person was not in the C-suite yet, but reporting to somebody in the C-suite, but still on that floor. And I go, hey, congratulations on earnings. Saw that in the paper this morning. And he's like, kind of like looking at us and like, yeah. And yeah. And we congratulate. We have a call, and the call was a little bit cold. It just didn't go anywhere. And we leave. And back at the hotel that afternoon, I'm glancing through the paper again, and I missed the article right below the article of the company earnings. It was an announcement of him and another person being promoted to senior vice president. Missed it. So guess what? We didn't see that. We just focused on the earnings. Didn't bother to read the whole paper. And what it did was we missed a key level because you know what? They're emotional. They have egos. Yep. He expected to say, hey, congratulations on the earnings. And oh, by the way, congratulations on being promoted to senior vice president. And missed it. See, so again, if there's something going on, we've got to be able. Now, those are rules that apply at any level of sales. But boy, if you only get one kick at the cat, talking to somebody high up, don't blow it.
Yeah. I think what you said is so important there, where if you're listening to this and you're thinking about the solution that you sell, we'll use sales training as an example. You can ask around at your company or talk to some of the execs at your company around like what business, like strategic initiative it might accompany. So like an example of that would be like if I just focused on outbound training, for example, and playbook creation, and we're going to train your reps and I'm going to coach your frontline leaders. The thing that enables the company to do is, we sell SMB and we're trying to move into mid-market and enterprise. Execs don't fill out demo requests. It's going to help us move up market, increase our average deal size, all stuff that happens at the top levels of the company to drive revenue. So if you kind of think about those for the solution you're selling, how it connects to the outcomes that the company is trying to drive, those are great questions, like you had mentioned there, where you can start thinking a little bit more about how that fits in. What do you recommend for if you're going to meet someone in the C-suite for the first time? And let's say that you're selling whatever it might be. It could be a security solution, and you're about to meet the CISO for the first time. How do you recommend like approaching that meeting? And the reason I ask that is I think the first impression is really important. Like how that first 5 minutes goes is, in my experience, it's either going to go one of two ways. You either break the ice and build some level of rapport or show that you know who the heck, that there's someone you should be talking to. And then the conversation is just a total breeze and it's almost just shooting the shit with the person. Or they just have their guard up the entire time because it doesn't feel like you're really someone they should be spending time with. What's your advice on how to kind of think about that first time that you get an opportunity, especially if it's a champion that maybe introduced you and is bringing you in? How do you think about that first meeting, that first impression?
Yeah, first of all, I got to walk through some of the basics. Overdress. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily put on a suit and tie, but it means you're going to put on a very, very good attire, whatever it might be. If you're a male or a female, you're going to always overdress. And what's funny is this is absolutely crazy. It's the shoes. The shoes are the giveaway. I had a company, a Fortune 10 company, and this C-level person who I got to know very personally said, you know what's funny? We have people come in here and we look at their shoes because that can tell us as to whether or not they're faking it or making it. Now,
Yeah.
let's put that aside. I'm going to do the homework. I'm going to do the. I want to find out all of the background. I want to find out all the background I can on the individuals that occupied that C-suite. What schools did they go to? What were their career paths, et cetera? There are plenty of ways to find that out. I'm going to find out what associations did they play in, because again, many times at the C level, they are on the boards of directors of various nonprofits, for-profits, or trade associations. I want to find out who those are. I want to find out what's happening there. I want to find out what's going on. I want to find out who their industry competitors are. I want to find out who their major shareholders are. What is their equity plan in the company? And again, these are all very, and you can find this all out in about 15 minutes. If they are a publicly traded company, I'm going out looking at some of their SEC filings for the last 2 or 3 quarters. I'm looking at what are the critical issues. What are the risk factors? In every SEC filing, there's a risk element. What are the elements of risk? Look at that risk, because guess what? If it's flagged, they're concerned about it. So how can what I'm doing, so like a CISO, every annual report, every quarterly filing in risk, there is going to be an element in there regarding data security. And so the question I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask is how comfortable is the board right now with where you're at in terms of data security, data privacy? You know, what has the board challenged you with? What's the board tasked you with? How often do you have to report to the board? What are the critical elements? Are you more critical about cybersecurity, or are you more critical about just simply financial transactions? In other words, again, depending on the business that they're in, there's all kinds of different levels of criteria. And what's funny is if you can name off some of those, that, hey, how are you doing in terms of this compliance, that compliance? Wow, that's good. Now it's not to play gotcha. It's not to play gotcha. But it's to be able to be prepared to have that conversation. So I'm walking in there, and I may have a solution. Don't put it on the table. Don't put it on the table. It's not a solution until they've said it's a solution they want to see. You're coming in because you're being introduced in, somebody's carrying you in. Great. I want to have that pleasantry conversation. And again, the pleasantry conversation might be 1 minute with some people in the C-suite. It might be 20 minutes with others. You never know, but you let them guide it. You let them guide it. And then what I'm going to do is I just want to begin to get them into a conversation as to the priorities on their plate. What are the challenges that they're faced with? What are the big issues? And the way I may get into it, for instance, is what's something that just happened in the news. If I'm meeting with CISO, if I'm meeting with a CISO, and right now, depending on when this airs and so forth, but CrowdStrike had a major issue back here, and hey, how did that impact you? Were you impacted by that, or what were your thoughts on that? Because I would imagine your CEO probably asked you, hey, do we have CrowdStrike?
Yeah.
And again, it's just to let them begin sharing with you, let them begin talking. Because many times what happens is they'll start sharing with you things regarding something. Oh, okay. Now I begin to understand where they're coming from. They'll talk about a historic experience or something coming up themselves. Oh yeah, when we do updates, we always make sure that we do a very staggered rollout. Or no, we go, because of our business is so seasonal, we shut down. We don't do any updates after October 1st. Between October 1st and February 1, no updates. Okay, I want to know that. So again, it's just you're letting them guide you. And your question, this whole thing, I love asking them their opinion. So what's your opinion on this?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? Because they've got egos. They want to share. Let them share. It's great. And then whatever they share, I can ask them another question on it. and they keep talking. I may have a comment regarding somebody else I met with or somebody. I love referencing. I was talking with a couple of, I can't mention the company's names, but Fortune 500 companies, and they were sharing the same thing. And, oh, wow. See, that's a little bit of that confirming that this isn't your first rodeo. This isn't the first time you've been sitting in that office. And so, because again, they have to accept you. They have to see you as one of them. But when they see you as one of them, man, doors open up.
Yeah.
Doors. Yeah.
It's the quickest way to close a deal. You know?
Oh, it is the quickest way to close a deal. But you got to stay in. You got to stay in there. That's why if you get down into technical performance and all that wonky stuff, they're going to send you downstairs to the bowels of the building very quickly.
Yeah. You mentioned something I was going to ask you about was customer stories, and that's such a powerful thing in sales that I feel is so underutilized. And one of my clients, what I was bugging them to do, and what a lot of my other clients will do that's so effective is it is a really simple spreadsheet that's got 3 or 4 columns on it. That's here's for all the new reps that didn't sell these deals. Here's the kind of general story behind what we did to help this company, what problem they were having, the individual that we worked with, etc. So sprinkling some of that stuff into the conversation, that definitely helps, because the credibility factor, like you said, I always say in sales, you start behind the starting line, right? It's the only profession, maybe besides politics and being a lawyer, where people just sort of inherently distrust you.
Oh yeah.
So you're building credibility, and like your number one objection is skepticism. So doing everything that you just outlined is a way to reduce skepticism.
Yeah, it is. And it's be a student learner.
Yeah.
I'm going to mention the name of a podcast right now that I think anybody who's calling on the C-suite or anybody in the tech space needs to be listening to. It's called Acquired, Acquired. And these are 4-hour podcasts, but they dive into deep subjects regarding the history of NVIDIA, the Microsoft,
oh wow,
Charlie Munger, Nike, Howard Schultz, Starbucks. But along the way, you pick up all of these little just C-suite nuances and the vocabulary and the language, and it's just powerful stuff. And that comes after you listen to Outbound Squad. So that's after you.
I just followed that podcast. I'm going to check that out. That's I think the beauty of podcasts is that you can hear interviews with a lot of these executives too. That's another little hack, is if you're about to meet an executive, especially a CEO, they've probably been interviewed somewhere. So you can listen to it or read the Forbes interview or whatever it might be to see what they're talking about right now. And you'd be surprised how flattering it is for people to say, I listened to your interview. One thing I had a question about was, and it's just little stuff like that goes a long ways.
Oh, it goes a long way. Yes. It works. Yeah.
Let's talk about what happens when you're starting below the power line, so to speak. I'm honestly just curious how you handle this now also, because I'm sure, just like me, you get inbound through your website from, someone that is not in the C-suite or a VP, right? It's someone that might have been tasked to look into 5 sales trainers. They're not directly connected with any of the decision makers or economic buyers. How do you recommend navigating conversations like that, where you're starting below the power line and you don't have that access yet?
Yeah. One of the things that I love doing is I'm going to ask them the exact same questions I would ask the C-suite person if they were on the call.
Yeah.
Now, here's why. 2 things. A, I want to allow them to feel important, because if I'm asking them a critical, important question, I want them to feel. But they also have to look for proof and validation.
Yeah.
Should they carry me forward? Should this person be somebody they should carry up the food chain? So it's very important. So ask them the exact same questions. because what I want to find out from them is they're going to be able to, hopefully and if they don't, that's going to be fine. That's okay. Hey, that's great. I'm sure in time we'll probably have a conversation that we'll be able to uncover this. Oh yeah, we will. Yeah. But again, it's just treat everybody with an absolute level of respect as if they're the CEO.
Yeah.
Because you never know where the lines of communication go. I mean, how many times have we seen somebody that you get this inbound inquiry and you think it's from a kind of a flunky person, but it happens to be the administrative assistant to the CRO.
Yep.
Whoa, wow. So guess what? That CRO is validating you as to whether or not you should go forward. So work with them. Here's the two questions that I love asking anybody early on. How have you made decisions like this in the past?
Yeah.
And I'm just listening for them to share names. I'm listening for them to share ideas. And the question I love asking is why is this an issue right now? What makes this an issue that needs to be solved now? And again, what I'm listening for is what are the critical time factors? What does this link into? What does this connect to? Because again, this is going to be information that's going to help me as I go up the food chain with them. And many times then what they're going to sit there and say is that, yeah, if you pass this first gate, then you'll be talking to so-and-so, then you'll be talking to so-and-so. You know, sometimes that's a game you got to play. And that's okay. But at each gate, I want to learn new insights. I want to learn more information.
Yeah. I love those two questions. It's very just, it's such a simple way to really get someone to open up about their process. And it naturally, like this multi-threading thing that people talk a lot about and getting to power, it's, I think a really big problem with it is you're not giving the person a reason to interact with other people in the company. You're just selfishly thinking it'll help me close the deal faster.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with people that you get a sense are a bit reluctant to introduce other people into the conversation? How do you handle those situations?
You hang up on them. No. You know, again, many times people do that because there's a level of ego. I was working with a company back here about 6 months ago, a major opportunity that this account executive had. But the problem was his entire relationship was with one contact at this organization. That was huge. And I told him, I said, how come we can't get it? Oh, he just won't. It's all about him. I said, this deal is never going to close. This deal is never, ever going to close. It didn't. It died. Because ultimately what this person was trying to do, this person was only using this account exec for this company I was working for just as leverage to help him with something else.
Oh, like negotiating with one of his competitors or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Happens way more than you would think, actually.
Oh, it happens way more than we think. Yeah. And we get led to the slaughter, thinking this is going to be an absolutely great deal. And it happens to and to a certain degree, we're going to stay in the game. I get it. We're going to stay in the game because it's a huge opportunity. Yeah, I get it. But I kept telling him, I said, look, if he is not willing to get you into the other elements of the sales process, you know, the other elements of other people, even procurement, even other people who are on the committee that are going to make the decisions, this deal's never going to close. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I've been on the positive end of that where, you know, I knew a VP of sales really well from their previous company. They moved, wanted to bring me in, and procurement just made them look at two other people. So they reached out to two other sales trainers with no intention of hiring those people just because they had to check a box.
Right.
So yeah, it definitely happens. At what point will you recommend a rep, I don't know, give up on a deal versus, because I'm thinking that rep probably wasted so much time. They probably wasted months of meeting with this person, hoping and, you know, crossing their fingers that something would happen. This person never introduced them to anyone or who knows? They probably didn't even socialize it to other people at the company. At what point do you recommend someone either stops or sets some sort of boundary at least, or says something and addresses it? At what point, how would someone know when to do something like that, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, I got to back up a little bit because this person kept them in their funnel, in their pipeline, because they needed it to be able to demonstrate to their boss that they had deals they were working on. See, basically, right? I mean, and I finally went to this guy's boss and I said, "Hey, look, this guy's got that deal. That's smoking dope and jumping rope. It ain't ever going to close. Period. Period." And so the piece is, you got to ask yourself two questions. One, what's the size of the prize?
Yeah.
The bigger the prize, the longer you're going to stay in the game. Period. I had a deal that took me 18 months to close, 46 contacts. But I was willing to stay in the game because the size of the prize was so well worth it. Okay.
Yep.
The other piece is this: is it moving forward? In other words, are you learning something new? And don't sit there and say, "Well, the customer's going to get back to me." That is garbage. That is code for they're not interested in you as much as you're interested in them. Period.
Yeah.
I want to find out, am I having tangible meetings? And when I have meetings, am I learning critical insights? And if I go 2-3 weeks without something like that, then guess what? The dog don't hunt. It's time. I may stay with them just from I'm going to touch base with them, but man, I'll tell you what, they don't have a seat. They don't have a place in my sales pipeline because it's stagnant.
Yeah.
But it's a decision every salesperson has to make themselves. The reason people keep stuff like that in their pipeline is because their boss is under pressure to show their boss that their people have got full pipelines.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something, a full pipeline of stuff like that, it's not a pipeline, it's a sewer pipe. And it's plugged and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Well, this has been great jamming with you again, Mark. Dude, there was so much in here. I love the last little bit there around knowing whether a deal is real or not, all of the stuff around interacting with the C-suite and how to prep. I think the biggest takeaway is you have to be conscious, to your point, around aligning with the strategic initiatives and keeping the conversation strategic if you want to stay in those C-suite conversations. Where can people go to check out? You got a bunch of great books. You do a bunch of speaking. You're posting a lot of content. Where's the best place for people to go check your stuff out, connect with you, and all that?
Best place is the website, thesaleshunter.com. With the last name Hunter, you got to use it, right? So anyway, thesaleshunter.com. And of course, I've got two, Jason, you got one really good podcast. So I have to have two. So I've got two. One is the Sales Hunter podcast. Gee, that's logical. Yep. And the other one is Sales Logic. And of course, you've been a guest on my podcast, the Sales Hunter. Podcast.
Thesaleshunter.com. Go check it out. Every time I tell my wife about our conversations, she's like, the Sales Hunter, that's a badass name.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. And people ask me, what was your name before you changed it? Hey, look, I owe it to my dad. Okay. I mean, I had a cool dad. I mean, and what's funny is I didn't use that initially. I met early on in my career as a trainer, speaker, consultant, etc. Guy said, why don't you use the name Hunter? And I go, I don't know. He said, man. And so he shamed me into it. So we went out, did some really extensive research, looked at domain names that were available, and thesaleshunter.com was available. Boom. That was it.
Yeah, that's the main. So go check out thesaleshunter.com. Appreciate you coming on, Mark.
Thank you so much. Great selling.